I think there's a lot of innovation going on in an area called reputation-based services, which is what are the odds that you are who you say you are, and by aggregating, say, lists of active botnets and viral infections, is your software up to date? But there's an interesting metaphor I have for the end user, and I'm actually a little bit down on end user education. I think the threat's too hard for them to figure out. We can't tell them not to visit web pages. We've got DNS shadow infrastructures that's bigger than the real DNS infrastructure on the internet. But metaphor, we bought a company in Germany, and they were basically 3 hours from anywhere, and so the only way to get there is on the Autobahn. And so now we go to Germany, we violate our rental car policy because we got to have a V8 Mercedes. If we're getting on that thing, we're not going in a spec. And so we're driving on the Autobahn, a bunch of guys in V8 Mercedes, we're going fast, and we see there's a car on the side of the road, and he's broken down. Not only is he broken down, he's getting a ticket. And I said, what's that all about? He's getting a ticket because his car broke down. I said, if you break down on the Autobahn, you get a €1,000 ticket because your vehicle's not maintained enough. We cannot have cars breaking down on the Autobahn. Drive on the back roads if you're not going to maintain your car. And so kind of one question I asked is provocative. I'm not sure if it's the right answer, but if your computer infects mine, maybe you should get a ticket because you didn't have your security software up to date. You didn't have a firewall, you weren't taking precautions, you were not maintained. Not as far as saying you need a driver's license to get on the internet, but maybe people need to take some personal responsibility for securing their own systems and by spending the right amount of resources on there, and maybe that could help clean up our network. We all have to go and get our vehicles and safety inspected to stay on the roads. Our brakes have to be good. Our exhaust has to be good. I would argue that an infected computer, especially say an employee of the Department of Defense who logs into their office, that infected computer could potentially do a lot more damage than a car with bad brakes. And so I think we need to look at these assets and how we instrument them and method them and determine how much personal responsibility people need to take other than them just all claiming to be victims.
Those are great points. My travel expense policy would not approve a Mercedes.
No, ours doesn't either.
Based on your comment, this is Jerry Gibbon from J&BG Consultants again. One of the big waves that is coming this way in the information age, as Vic pointed out earlier, is compliance regulation. Some of this compliance is being brought on by major corporations, as also these silos of industry finance, marketing, e-commerce. They're all being brought to the forefront because they feel that not enough people know about it. And the question is, should this be something that the government should be more heavily involved in and through regulation, or should we just leave that up to private industry?
I guess that is the question, right? And maybe that's something we need to be seeking and exploring when we get the next follow-on iteration of this. What is the proper role for government? And get the views from the silos and get the views from the government and do a comparative analysis to see, where are we? Where are we with that? I believe that is a great national debate. That's my personal view.
Yeah, and I think the evolution of Web 1.0 to 4.0, where we initially connected information and we connected people. Now we're connecting knowledge and we're going to be connecting intelligence. The further you get up that spectrum, the more compliance rigor we're going to need because the risk is exponentially higher as the web evolution evolves. So there is a need for a debate. On that.
I'd look at two standards, one called SOX, one called payment card industry. SOX is government mandated and payment card industry is industry initiated. SOX has had being in the technology community and working with startups, SOX has had a tremendously negative impact on the economy because every company now has to take EPS out of their shareholders' pockets to pay auditors tremendous fees to audit their books, and we've just absolutely overcorrected on SOX. Today, I was talking to a friend of mine who's the CEO of a really successful startup, and it takes so much. He wants to go public, but to go public, he's got to have his SOX audits done, and he won't be profitable after he pays the auditors, right? So what do you end up with? You end up with good books, but non-profitable companies. And is that really where we want to be? I would argue we need to find some middle ground. But taking EPS, I mean, corporate dividends, I think, are a key part of America and why America works, and we're taking those out of people's pockets. The other side of it is the payment card industry support. And so these three vendors got together and said, look, we're tired of hearing that another 1 million credit cards was stolen and sold on the underground, and the fact this entire information currency has evolved. We're gonna start taking these folks off our network if they can't secure this data, and it's had a tremendously positive impact on the way companies secure their networks. And it's not going to solve everything, but it's been positive for the market. It's been positive to elevate the level of security at small, medium businesses, and it'll attenuate. But I think I look at one and the other, and I think that the private regulation, self-regulation by industry has been more successful than government mandated.
Okay, we have a question from the net. Do you have a question?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, my name is Lake, and I'm with the Maryland military. I'm just wondering if you could comment on the TCSec, which was a big part of the InfoSec planning a few years ago at the conference I attended. I know Alliance of Microsoft, Intel, a couple of other industry giants. It appears the hardware, or the, how would you say, the hardware component has to be a major part in any solution that is going to be derived as far as arriving at a robust InfoSec environment. And I'm wondering if, in light of that, perhaps there needs to be a fresh look taken to the approach of trying to arrive at a viable information security posture for the entire country. Given the fact that in computer science, when you're looking at information as the internet as a whole, you're looking at the 7 layers. Perhaps maybe a new approach needs to be devised whereby the 7 layers is being looked at in terms of how best to arrive at security at these individual layers, and to take a new look at the POSIX concept, the portable operating systems design, and how that in itself can then be redone or reworked to bring everybody into more secure framework as far as what you call InfoSec and assurance is concerned. Thanks.
Okay, I'll try that one. Our defense in-depth strategy, when we respond to procurements, it's going to have, and maybe this is not the best term, but it's going to have a security strategy for the power pipe and the ping. And that's going to be the foundational gear that the information resides on, and the techniques and the strategies and the solutions to protect the 3 Ps is different than what you apply at the information layer, the application layer, and then the people layer. The specifics of the pack that you mentioned, I'm not specifically familiar with, but I do believe, you mentioned the hardware layer, the utilization of agents at the hardware layer as it pertains to security threats, I think we need to increase. I think we need to, as an industry and the tool providers, having let's say a Google-like map image of the internet of all the hardware assets, and real-time intrusions at the hardware level should be getting some more attention, and how do we react to those in a more proactive manner. I think the hardware is considered probably a lesser threat than the actual information and the application people, but it does need more adequate attention. And I think that's what you were asking.